Machine learning can translate ancient languages, can drive a car, can write a symphony, can play chess, can provide rudimentary IT support, can identify suspicious circumstances when you're using your credit card. This short lecture will give you everything you need to competently discuss machine learning and also give you an intuition on the opportunities we have and don't have to use machine learning, specifically in industry. First, we're going to need some data. If you look at our data here, we have the same three features defined for all of our data points. We have some structure: weight at birth, length at birth, and age of death before or after 50. Three features, we're going to take all but one, that's two features, and map those out into space. If you had 1,000 features, you would map 999 of them out into 999 dimensional space. That sounds very exotic, but when we talk about dimensions here, we're only talking about the size of the matrices that we're using in the calculations. There's nothing otherworldly about it. This is two-dimensional space, so we take our 7 pounds and 20 inches, and that becomes, if you're standing on this tile floor, walking 7 tiles forward and 20 tiles to the right. So now that we've mapped all but one of our features, the remaining feature becomes our label. The label is the only feature you're trying to predict. Machine learning can do some interesting things to find an answer to a specific question, but you have to give it a question. You're not consulting the oracle. Here is everything the algorithm needs. All of our data points, again, positioned by all but one of their features and labeled with the last feature. The features don't have to be binary. Instead of death before or after 50, you could have age in years or age in months, age in weeks. As a label, you can have a gradient, anything that is a measurement of the same value. So now that we've got everything in place, the machine learning is about to take place. Here's what the machine did. Took our vector space and divided it into regions where one outcome is more likely. Now, as we get new feature vectors without a label, the machine will be able to infer what that label should be. In this case, infants born, we can look at the birth weight and birth length and infer whether that infant will live past the age of 50. We can see with our eyes some of the challenges. If you look at the red island there with the green circle around it, that's telling us that there's some narrow intersection of features at which we can expect a result that's different than the surrounding vector space. That's probably not true, and even if it were, we couldn't prove it with one data point. Each one of these labels is not deterministic. It is a draw from a probabilistic distribution. That is, we could do the same thing under the same circumstances, at least so far as we have the ability to measure and control them, and get a different result. If you take enough samples, you're going to get a result at an intersection of features that you might not get if you did it 500 more times. There are methods for accounting for this. There are parameters in our model that we can adjust to make the contribution of each point a little bit less. So now we've got a model that's probably going to be a better predictor, even though it has some error. You have some red dots in your blue space and some blue dots in your red space. This result even looks a little more intuitive. But you would never see it in high dimensional space. The only way to identify a spot in high dimensional space would be to take subsets of your data, identify boundaries, and then compare the boundaries across the subsets. The end result of that is that you're only going to have as much resolution in your boundary as you could get from half or less of your data. And resolution becomes important if you are looking to find something that you don't already know. In the same way, your labels don't have to be binary, your boundaries don't have to be hard boundaries. You can make something more akin to a heat map where you have areas of near certainty or likelihood, or you're not even sure of a particular outcome. The image on the right even looks like a target. I picked this data set on purpose for that image because there's a misconception in machine learning that you can never unwind something or identify the actual contributing factors.
That is true in some cases with some methods, but at this scale you can just start removing features from your vectors and testing to see if you still have the same predictive power. Expect to find that any complex predictive relationship you find is actually a simple causal relationship in disguise.
This data set was pretty much a textbook example. Let's go through something closer to what we might try in our jobs. We'll try simulating predicting an OSHA recordable incident. The first big challenge we're going to have is that you almost never have an incident in unsafe circumstances. And you also almost never have an incident in safe circumstances, even less. So we're looking at a point where in most of our circumstances, most of the time, all of our labels are going to be non-incidents. All of our incidents will be surrounded by non-incidents, which leads to the bigger challenge. How do you quantify non-incidents? If we were going to be really rigorous about this, we would count a non-incident every time any feature in our feature vector changed. So depending on the granularity of your feature vector, you could have tens of millions of non-incidents for every incident. We don't have the technology for that, and we're never going to, so we have come up with things like incident-free days and incident rate to quantify non-incidents. In this case, for this purpose, incident-free days is far superior because both of these quantifiers require time, and feature vectors change over time, so the better quantifier is the one that takes less time. If you imagine that it takes 3 months to determine an incident rate, what distinctive features will you have at the end of 3 months compared to all the other places you were using 3 months to get an incident rate? However we count them, we're going to have a lot more non-incidents than we are incidents. And let's see what the machine can do with that. You see all we've gotten is a bunch of the islands around isolated points, and we've already talked about why that isn't predictive. Again, we can relax our features, but we don't get a better result because this isn't a problem of underfitting or overfitting. There isn't a sweet spot between. The problem is the data. Here's one more data set to show another problem that might be hiding out there in your space. You could have a feature vector that's 500 features long, and even one of those, if even one of those is strongly predictive, then you can end up in a situation like this. And you'll see what happens when we allow the machine to divide this. The vertical axis, or whatever feature is mapped onto the vertical axis, is meaningless. The horizontal axis might be time of day, and the line dividing it could be the time we go to work. So we don't have incidents before work. We do have incidents at work. So in that sense, the model is predictive. But what we've done is hide this very simple relationship as a combination of perhaps 500 features. Again, we can unwind this to find these features, and we have to do that to make sure that we aren't rediscovering something we already know, but in a form that's harder to control or manage. If whoever you're speaking to isn't offering to do this for you, then you're maybe speaking to the wrong person. So is what we've been talking about a neural network? Technically, it's a subset of neural network, but practically, no, it's not. We've taken our feature vectors individually and mapped them in space, then used a numerical approach to divide that space. A neural network uses a logic approach, and it does that by making inferences about the metastructure of our feature vector. If you look at an image made of pixels or a book made of paragraphs, made of sentences, made of words, made of letters, or a symphony made of instruments which are each playing notes, then those things have an inherent structure that our data never will. So that structure, deviations from it and characteristics of it can be used to infer new features logically, then those features divide the space. Our data never will have those features, and even if it did, we don't have the volume of data to use this approach. What we're looking for is simple causal relationships, or in very rare cases, relatively simple causal relationships. And we've discussed some of the challenges with doing so through machine learning, particularly those challenges that can be expressed visually. But there are other challenges that machine learning has in common with any approach to looking at data that is drawn from probabilistic distributions. That is, the same thing does not always happen under the same circumstances. This article on my website, and I'll put a link in the notes, addresses some of the other challenges you have when dealing with this kind of data, which is all the data that we have. Once you've identified a causal relationship through machine learning or anything else, this article will help you verify that it will indeed have a predictive power for you. In closing, I will just ask you to kindly direct YouTube's machine learning algorithms toward this video by clicking like and subscribe. Thank you very much.